here this morning. This is fantastic. Thank you all for being here for the March for Science. My name is Amanda Thomas, and I am the organizer and host of an event called Science on Tap. We have a booth in the back. Woohoo! Hey, hello everyone. And I'm also on the Education Committee, one of the co-chairs of the Education Committee for the March for Science, and we are so pleased that you are all here today. First of all, I want to see who is here. If you're a scientist, raise your hand. Wow, fantastic. If you are a family member or a friend of a scientist, raise your hand. Awesome. How about if you're a teacher? If you're a teacher, lots of teachers in the audience. Great. And if science has touched your life in some tangible and important way, raise your hand. It's pretty much everybody, right? Yeah. Thank you all for coming. And hey, the rain, I don't want to jinx it because it's bad luck to be superstitious, but the rain has stopped for now, so keep your fingers crossed that we'll have that for a little bit longer. So, as you may know, you are part of something that's huge today. It's happening, the March for Science is happening in over 500 places around the world, in 100 different countries, and on all 7 continents. So, fantastic. We've been seeing pictures from Australia and Africa and Europe, and I believe New York is already, they've been on their march for a while on the East Coast, so yay. Oregon represent. Awesome. So just so you know what to expect, it's about 10 after right now. We're going to have a couple speakers for you, some really fantastic people going to talk to you a little bit about science. And then at 11 a.m. we are going to start marching, and the march will start right over here and go south on NATO. We'll tell you where that's going to be in just a little while. And then during the march and until 3 p.m. today, we will have our Science Expo going on. And north of here, where you see all of those tents, there's all sorts of scientists and groups who have science demos. We've got jugglers, and you can touch human brains. You can hold brains in your hand. I'm totally not kidding. It's really fantastic. There's spiders. There's all kinds of different scientists who have lots of things to tell you. Really fun. The spiders are contained. Don't worry. It's fine. And they're not dangerous to humans. So please check out our Science Expo. There's a kids area back there. I believe we're going to have Napoleon the alpaca later on this afternoon with this little hat on. It's going to be great. So please stick around, check out the Science Expo, and show your support for science. A few other things, some housekeeping. We have a family and medical tent, a family relief and medical tent way back at the north end down by the Battleship Memorial. There is also a second medical relief tent right over to the east here of the stage. And there northeast of the stage, I believe we have some, accessible seating for those with mobility devices. So I believe we've got that over there as well. In this area, we're hoping to have some photographers, so thank you for staying clear of that area. So today I want to challenge you. As you hear our speakers this morning and as you march today, I want you to engage with the people around you. If you see an interesting sign, which there are plenty of those, if you see a funny sign, there's a lot of those as well, or if you see a sign that maybe has a equation or something that you don't understand, there's some of those too, please engage with that person. Please ask them what they mean. Compliment them on their sign. Start a conversation about what they are engaged and excited about as shown by their sign. If you see somebody wearing a lab coat, which I know that there are some of you out there, ask them if they're a scientist and see what they do. Find out about what they do in their lab or in the field. And finally, when you go home today, talk to your family, your friends, and your neighbors about what you see today and what science means to you. Because science means a lot to all of us, right? Yeah. So today, our first speaker to kick us off is Senator Elizabeth Steiner Hayward, MD. Senator Steiner Hayward represents District 17, which is in Northwest Portland and Beaverton. We have anybody from her district here? Fantastic. Let's see. She's a family physician at OHSU, and much of Senator Steiner Hayward's decision to run for office was based on the goal of making Oregon the healthiest state in the nation. In her time as a legislator, she works to pass legislation focused on public health intervention through scientific evidence and research.
Yes.
Please welcome Senator Elizabeth Steiner Hayward.
Thank you so much. Now I got to deal with the trick of managing a speech and a mic. And I first want to give a shout out to my colleague Lou Frederick, who's standing up here, senator from North Portland and Northeast Portland. Awesome dude, scientist, educator, fabulous legislator. And in the orange jacket right down there, Senator Michael Dembro. I'm guessing we've got other state legislators around here. If you are one, make yourself known to your people around you, because they deserve to know how we in the Oregon legislature support science. So I want you to remember two words. Thank science. Science happens at benches and bedsides, in classrooms and communities, at home and in the field. Science includes reactions in test tubes, conversations in focus groups, and crunching enormous data sets. Engineers, chemists, geologists, doctors, farmers, and kids dropping toys off of high chairs are all scientists. Science is cool. Science is sexy. Yeah. Science is fun. Woo! Yeah, I haven't quite mastered this whole trick there. So, I've been a scientist my whole life, and I've spent over 25 years as a family physician, caring for whole people in the context of their families and communities. I've been a clinician, an educator, and a researcher. I was born to be a physician. Almost literally, I decided I wanted to be a doctor when I was 4. 50 years ago, in case anybody's curious. And I love the work. As a physician, I've always strived to practice medicine using evidence-based policy, evidence-based medicine. My patients deserve nothing less. Scientific, research-based evidence makes me a better doctor, better able to serve my patients, their families, and our community in the best possible ways. Every day of my career, I thank science for helping me and those I serve. People ask me, why did I leave academic medicine, or sort of leave it, to become a legislator? And as I said, it's because, oh look, fish, how cool. Sorry, I'm a little easily distracted. But how can you not be distracted by that? All right, I'm going to be bad on my time at this point. But my reliance on credible data and evidence did not stop when I became a legislator. In fact, it only increased. As a certified budget geek, I always ask for data supporting the efficacy of programs prior to agreeing to fund them. When recommending new policy, my staff and I, and shout out to my staffer Ellie, who's here with me today, and her friend Dakota, who's one of my constituents, we do as much research as possible to ensure we're proposing an evidence-based approach. We thank science for giving us data to inform our decisions. Our state will only be the healthiest in the nation through evidence-based policies. The people of Oregon deserve nothing else less. That the politicization of science often interferes with the implementation of evidence-based policy. Science should be objective and should be seen as objective information. However, and this isn't new, remember Galileo, as political parties separate, they use questions about the reliability of science as a political tool, leaving us without objective information that should be the basis for policy. Furthermore, the level of science literacy in general has dropped, exacerbating the inability to understand its validity. The politically motivated questioning combined with science illiteracy leaves the public confused and distrusting, unsure about what to do. Language matters. I gotta hurry. I gotta say this really quick, so listen up. Belief is a word that does not belong in the discussion of science. Thank you. I see a sign that says beliefs don't equal facts. Belief plays an important role in society, but it applies to unverifiable concepts like faith and love. Knowledge and veracity are the words we should use for oh, I'm never going to finish in 30 seconds. Hang tight. We should say, I know the science is valid. The science is verifiable. So please, when you're talking about science, talk about knowing the science, about the validity of the science. How do we combat the politicization? Advocacy. Stand up for science education. Educate our policy measures. Quick questions, pay attention. Raise your hand if you're 17 and older and registered to vote. Woo! Raise your hand if you voted in at least 4 of the last 6 elections. Raise your, hey, how you doing? Raise your hand if you know who your legislators are. Raise your hand if you've called or written to your legislator about it. So do it. If you don't know, there's fewer hands that go up every time, every question I asked. Promise me that when you go home, if you don't know who they are, you'll look them up. And sometime this week, you'll write a personal email to your representatives thanking them if they're supporting evidence-based policy and practice and educating them about what they need to know. So you remember those words? Thank science? Help me out here. When our children avoid preventable diseases, what do? Thank science! When our conventional and organic farmers bring more plentiful crops to market, what do? Thank science! When we... All corporate pools accountable, yeah. Thanks, Art. When we use our mobile phones to connect with family and friends around the world, what do? Thank science! When we marvel at beautiful video footage of Amazon animals, what do? Thank science! When you can hear me from 2 blocks away because of this great PA system, what do? Thank science! Now get out there and advocate for what we know. Science!
Thank you, Senator Steiner Hayward. Woo! We also want to take a moment to thank some of the fabulous people who have helped make this march a reality. First, our sponsors, Oregon Wild and the Xerces Society. Yes, thank you. Next, thank you to those of you who've donated generously and bought our fabulous t-shirts. Thank you. Also, thank you to the local businesses who donated in-kind resources. And finally, we want to say a big thank you to all of the dozens of individuals who have helped with the planning of this event and who are here today as volunteers helping us put this on. So thank you, volunteers. Our next speaker this morning is Rich Hatfield, a senior conservation biologist at the Portland-based Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation. Rich also serves as the Red List Authority for the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, Bumblebee Specialist Group. Rich is one of the chief petitioners to list the rusty patch bumblebee under the endangered species list, North America's first bee added to that list. Rich is also a steering committee member for the March for Science. And let's welcome Rich Hatfield.
Thank you, Amanda. This is incredible. Thank you all so much for being here. This is so inspiring to see all of you here in support of science. I'm here to talk to you just a little bit about the Endangered Species Act and why it's important and what we can do to help it out. Hold the mic closer. Gotcha. I can respond to feedback. That's good. Thanks, science. That's right. When I started my career as a conservation biologist, I was like most other aspiring naturalists and those interested in conservation. I wanted to be the one that saved the wolves and the grizzly bears. But when I looked deeper into conservation, I realized that our job was going to be more difficult than that. while saving the fuzzy, charismatic creatures of the world remains incredibly important, there were two issues that I recognized. The first problem was that grizzly bears and wolves don't live among people. They live in the wilderness, in the mountains. By focusing solely on saving these animals, it felt to me that we were further removing human beings from the animals we were trying to protect. The second issue was that wolves and grizzly bears, while still highly imperiled, they had support. There were lots of talented scientists studying their populations. These efforts have surely improved the ecology of much of the western United States. My point is that in addition to grizzly bears and wolves, I realized there were thousands of other animals deserving of our attention. While becoming aware of this bigger picture, I fell in love with smaller creatures, namely bees. Not only the domesticated honeybees that so many of you have likely learned about, but our native bees, the beautiful and diverse animals that represent thousands of species few people even know exist. I decided that I was going to speak for the animals that don't have a voice. You all likely know how important bees are for our food supply. Bees provide 1 out of 3 bites of food that we put into our bodies, and native bees help feed wildlife like grizzly bears and songbirds through the production of wild fruits, nuts, seeds, and roots. You all also likely know that bees are in trouble, and the reality is that many of our native bees are faring even worse than honeybees, and some are on the brink of extinction. Science has taught us that there is a solution: habitat. We can all do something to help bees and other pollinators. They live in our backyards, not in the wilderness, not in the mountains only. And they need our help. You can give them food by planting flowers. You can give them a safe place to build a nest. You can protect them by not using toxic pesticides that have no place in a functional ecosystem. If you are interested in other ways to help, please check out the resources from the Xerces Society. There's lots more there and lots more online. Unfortunately, creating habitat in urban areas will help, but it's not going to solve this problem entirely. Science has taught us that much of what we are doing to produce the food on which we depend is harming the very animals we rely on to help grow that food. We need the support of the agro-industry, and progress is being made on that front. Conscientious companies are beginning to make a difference, but there is still a long way to go. The majority of industry won't do this willingly. Short-term quarterly profits often eclipse long-term financial and ecological sustainability. Thankfully, in 1973, Congress passed and President Richard Nixon signed the Endangered Species Act to protect species and the ecosystems upon which they depend. In 1982, Congress ensured that listings would be made solely on the best scientific data available. That's right. Over the last 5 years, I, along with my fantastic team at the Xerces Society and many scientific partners, have been delivering the best available science to the Fish and Wildlife Service to have the first bee in North America added to the endangered species list. In late 2016, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service finally agreed with our analysis and officially added the rusty patch bumblebee to the Endangered Species Act. I'm supposed to be wrapping up, but I'm going to go on a little longer. Sorry. Ultimately, in this case, the best available science has indeed informed policy, which is exactly how our work should be respected and exactly how things need to continue to work in the future. We, the people, must demand it. The implications of this endangered species listing decision are tremendous. Now, an animal that few people have ever heard of or taken the time to look for has the potential to affect policy and conservation on farms, in parks, and open spaces throughout much of the United States. This story doesn't happen in any other country in the world, and it is part of what makes the United States so special. Historically, we have cared enough about species protection to enact regulations to prevent extinction. This must continue, and we the people must demand it. Please don't listen to the rhetoric from some politicians telling you that the Endangered Species Act doesn't work and is a waste of money. Animal conservation doesn't happen at the time scale of quarterly profits and corporate goals. If we take the time to look at nature's time scale, science shows us that the majority of animals on the endangered species list are on a trajectory towards recovery, the exact opposite trajectory that landed them on the list in the first place. The Endangered Species Act works, and it must continue to work. We the people must demand it. To make this happen, we need fully funded research programs across the scientific spectrum and fully funded agencies tasked with protecting human, plant, and wildlife welfare. Without this funding, the unspoken majority of all species become even more disenfranchised. Without a voice, it is not just the unspoken majority that will suffer. So speak up for science, give all species a voice, support research, and tell your representatives that it is of the utmost importance to you and all the creatures for which we share this planet. There truly is no planet B. Thank you for being here. Thank you, support for science. Woo! Let's do this.
Thank you, Rich, for all of your work on behalf of the bees and on behalf of the march. We want to harness all of the energy that we have here today and enthusiasm for the march beyond just today. To that end, we've created a new organization, the Portland Science Advocates. PSA is committed to supporting science and scientists in the Portland metro area in Washington, or Southwest Washington and Oregon. And we have several goals, including to strengthen and improve communication among scientists and the public, because we want to promote science education for everyone. Woo! To foster an interest in science in the public through outreach and the media, and to advocate for the responsible use of science and data in public policy. Right? Also to encourage the use of the scientific method for the greater good. Woo-hoo! We have a PSA booth in the Science Expo in the back there, and I'd like to encourage all of you to stop by to talk to us. You can pick up a shirt, you can register your email address, you can check out our website, and you can find out about some of the great events we have coming up in the near future. So check out the PSA booth. Thanks. So for our third speaker, it is my pleasure to introduce Shashi Jan. Shashi is an innovation manager at the Intel Corporation, is an instructor and a curriculum developer for the TIE Young Entrepreneurs, an initiative to inspire, challenge, and empower students to become the next generation of entrepreneurs, business, and community leaders. Shashi teaches high school students a project-based curriculum that has a strong emphasis on design, thinking, and customer validation. In this work, Shashi has partnered with local schools to reach at-risk youth. He has coached students, found them financial assistance, and led them to internship opportunities. Shashi also won Intel's 2015 Involved Global Hero Award. Please welcome Shashi Jan.
Thank you for that lovely intro. My name is Shashi Jan. I'm actually here to thank science. So I'm here to talk about the world-changing power of marrying science to entrepreneurship. So I see this every day. As an innovation manager at Intel, I get to see and work with startups every day that are on the cutting edge of technology. As a curriculum designer and instructor for Thai youth entrepreneurs, I'm helping students build their own businesses and thereby learn how to actually bring science into product. We teach them amazing things like design thinking. We teach them how to talk to customers. We're at schools like Benson and Reynolds and Rosemary Anderson. So we're doing some really interesting things. So when most people think about startups, they think about apps, stuff that's on phones, Snapchat and whatnot. And God knows we have a lot of that here in Portland and all around the world. But there's other examples of really great big thinking entrepreneurship out there, like Tesla. They're making electric cars cool. Oculus is bringing us VR worlds. Organovo is 3D printing organs. Just this week, I went and visited a little company up in Seattle called Planetary Resources. They're mining asteroids. It's amazing. They're bringing science they're building our future here. So one thing I wanted to point out is no matter how big or small these companies are, they have one thing in common. They see opportunity everywhere. They're not content to sit and let problems happen, or they're not content to live with problems. So like scientists though, when they identify a problem, they test and iterate on a solution to prove out that they can build something for someone. The difference is they use different tools. They use ideation techniques. They use design thinking and customer development for building a product, and rapid prototyping like 3D printing to make the products happen. So how does this even relate to science? My point is, if you're a scientist, you should think about entrepreneurship. So I want to tell you the story of one of my student teams that actually used a science fair project to build a medical device. So early last year, I had a student that was building a device. He was doing really, really well with it. His grandfather died of a heart attack. This is about as loud as I get, I'm sorry. So my student's father lost his grandfather to a heart attack. It was really unexpected, even though he was South Asian, and we're known as an at-risk population for heart attacks. So 1 week he was there, the next week he was gone. So as a 15-year-old, he wondered what could he do about it. So he sat down and talked to two of his friends. They too had experienced the loss of a relative due to heart disease. One of them knew a kid who was a scientific researcher who was developing nanotechnology to detect cancer. So they went and talked to this kid, and he too had experienced the loss of a relative due to heart disease. They teamed up. They turned this technology into something that could detect heart disease in a saliva sample. So unbelievable stuff. Yes. They rounded out their team. They built a little box that could give you a little bit, that would detect a voltage. It would give you a little voltage waveform when it detected heart disease. Didn't work so well. What they did is because they didn't talk to customers, they talked to the people who were experiencing this. So they iterated 3 times, and what they ended up with was an early warning system for heart disease you could take home, an app and a little box that worked like a saliva strip here. So they won our competition, needless to say. So I'm telling you this story because it really underscored one thing for me. So scientific curiosity about the unknown finds its mirror in the entrepreneur's drive to solve problems. And so why does this matter here? We're all motivated today to come here and to talk and to do something about the changes that are happening in our country. I'm asking you to commit your time to actually making that change. Take some time today while on the march, take 30 seconds, meet someone you don't know. Maybe you'll end up in finding a problem, someone who has a similar problem, and you could do what EM Dream did. So I hope that you can march away from here thinking not just what you can do, but what you can do together. Because individually we may go faster, but together we'll go further.
Thank you, Shashi. We're excited to welcome our next speaker, Gabe Shuships, who is a fish biologist and a citizen of the Cayuse and Walla Walla nations of the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla. He is an education director for the Friends of Tryon Creek and an adjunct faculty member at Portland State University, where he teaches courses focused on Indigenous knowledge bases and science education. Gabe holds a master's degree in fisheries biology from Oregon State University, and he engages both scientific knowledge and traditional ways of understanding to address problems within the natural world to ultimately restore, protect, and enhance first foods for Indigenous peoples. Gabe will speak about his approach to science through the cultural lens of his native traditions. Let's welcome Gabe Shuships.
Thank you very much. Is there any trouble? Can you hear me now? I got a really loud voice. So thank you for having me. Tots Maywe is how we say welcome in the Sahaptin language. So I put together a big 5-minute written speech that I was going to read verbatim, but I tossed that all out this morning. I'm here to talk science. So science is happening every day. We're all scientists here. So the tribes look and do what is known as science. It just was never known that. We look to our ecological indicators. We look to the river here that was once full of lamprey, salmon, steelhead, and now not so much. So I want to talk a little bit today about building your relationship with nature. How many people have a relationship with nature today? So we're at a press point where in our society, in modern society, all of our commodities, all of our natural resources are bought and paid for. What happens whenever we have no more resources? Where do we go? We start selling off our public lands. We start selling off our tribal lands. What happens then? Where do we go? So I'm here to talk a little bit about the tribal perspective. So we've always been here. We've been here since time immemorial doing science. So we have a strong relationship with nature even today. And I think a lot about resilience. Tribes have a lot of resilience. In this society, there's been multiple waves of genocide committed on indigenous peoples. Everything from assimilation, outright genocide, to now, forced assimilation. So what's happening now to science will ultimately make all of us stronger, as what happened throughout modern society to the tribes has made us stronger. We need to come together today to become stronger and to empower one another to be scientists, to take away that intimidation factor behind what science is. I got into science a long time ago to help my tribe protect our first foods, to think about lamprey, to think about steelhead, to think about salmon. But also in my day job, I work to help our urban population build and maintain the relationship with science out of a natural area, 15 minutes southwest of here. We get students, young and old, that don't have much exposure to science, that aren't able to go to their local natural area. Their field trips might be the only time they see a coniferous forest. And what do you do when you're that cut off into urban strife? We need to empower one another. I'm calling you today to bring other people into science, bring other people into your world, bring other people into your backyard habitat. Maybe you're like me, you don't have a backyard. What can you do? Advocate for an urban garden. Visit your natural spaces, promote your natural spaces. The tribes like to look out for our next generations. We're thinking 7 generations ahead at all times. It's not us, it's not me, it's our younger people that are really going to make an impact. That's what motivates me today. Empower science. These young people are going to make our future decisions. It's up to our next generations today. I'm calling you, and it's up to our past generations that have laid this path. People like my son, who's here with me today. Other people that I've met working with cultural organizations. So I want to create a truly inclusive scientific environment. How can we do that? I want to bring everybody into the conversation about science. And maybe we take away the word science, because science is happening every day, whether it's biologically, ecologically, or physically. We're all doing science. And what actually is science? Science is, to me, is thinking critically, not taking whatever's given to you, looking into things, being resilient like the ecosystem here. And thinking of that, I can think of a young man that I've met recently who wants to go to college to do environmental science. This young man overcame homelessness. This young man had so much strife in his early years, but now he's well on his way to doing science. And I think he's out there somewhere, and if he is, you know, Devontae, this is for you. People like you can change the world. You know, it's all of us. So as I scrapped my original speech, you know, just let me know again. So this doesn't start and end here with this march today. This march is a great time to really, it's a gut check time to think about how can we carry this on into our day-to-day lives. Get involved with your local politics. You know, be a local advocate. Empower others to ultimately help society. I mean, this is one piece. This is a big piece, but it doesn't end here. So again, like our first speaker said, this is all science. While some don't value science, I mean, we're doing science. We have science in our pockets today. So we're going to adapt and use science to ultimately take down the obstacles that are in front of us. So with that said, this is science right here. Science. This is science. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Let's be good to one another. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabe. I've had a request to have you all scoot forward. So to take a couple steps forward, fill in some gaps because we've got a lot more people showing up and they're all trying to fit in. Wow, this is kind of cool. And we're running out of room in the back there and we want to get everybody in as much as we can. So we have so many people here for science. It's fantastic. So we are pleased to have the support of elected officials, including our next speaker, Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici, who represents Oregon's 1st Congressional District in the northwest portion of the state. She is committed to strengthening public education, which is one of the reasons she got involved in public service. Suzanne is the founder and co-chair of the bipartisan Congressional STEAM Caucus, which stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Math. And she also serves as a member of the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology, and is the top Democratic member on the Subcommittee for the Environment. Take it away.
Thank you, Science.
Okay.
There we go.
Happy Earth Day! I can't hear you! This is amazing! It's so exciting to be here and to see all of you here to support science. And I want to tell you, the next time I sit down in a science committee hearing, I'm going to be looking at all of these signs. I'm having all these in my mind and all this energy that's here today because we need it in the Science Committee in the House of Representatives. I tell you, it can be a challenge in this Science Committee. In fact, recently we had a hearing about climate change. Now, why we're debating whether there's climate change or whether humans contribute to climate change is one issue, but I tell you, they had 3 climate skeptics and 1 good climate scientist, right? Now, raise your hand if you've ever seen the John Oliver clip about why there's a debate when there's 1 denier and 1 scientist. And I actually said we need 97 more climate scientists if we want this to even appear balanced in the Science Committee.
shouldn't be talking about whether there's climate change or whether humans contribute to it because we know that, right? Yes. We know that. We should be talking about what we do about it. Our glaciers are melting, our sea levels are rising, there's ocean acidification, there are all of these challenges that we should be talking about. How to increase renewable energy and decrease fossil fuels. These are all things we should be talking about when we're talking about whether there's climate change. So I'm there for the fight. I know Earl Blumenauer is too, but you know, it isn't just climate change, it's all the funding issues that are being attacked right now that are on the chopping block. Why would we cut research, right? And the EPA is on the chopping block, their budget. No. National Science Foundation, why would we cut scientific research? NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. NIH, why would we cut research? I have an idea. Why don't we take the money that people want to spend on the wall? So I'm going to be fighting for research, for investments in research. It requires some long-term thinking to invest in research, and we need that. And speaking of long-term thinking, I also serve on the Education and Workforce Committee, which comes in handy because I'm often trying to educate my colleagues about why we need to address the threat of climate change. But we know we need to educate people to be problem solvers, to take on the challenges of the next generation. And that's why I started the STEAM Caucus, and also because we need more girls and people of color. In fact, I looked at research, and research shows that people become more creative and innovative when both halves of their brain are educated. And also, it's interesting to know that the Nobel laureates in sciences are much more likely to be engaged in arts and crafts and arts activities. Yes. So I'm focused on STEAM, not STEM, because they're all important, making sure we have creative and innovative people in the sciences, in technology, in engineering, and in math. And I want to give you just a little bit of positive news. There is, despite the challenges on the Science Committee, there is a bipartisan climate solutions caucus. Okay? So science is not a partisan issue, should not be a partisan issue. So there's a little bit of hope that there's a climate solutions caucus with an equal number of Democrats and Republicans in Congress who are ready, willing, and able to tackle climate change. So I wanted to leave you with a little bit of hope there, and also say that we have a great delegate. You know, Earl's here, Earl Blumenauer is going to speak. We are going to go back to Washington, D.C. with all of you in our mind, this beautiful sea of science supporters, and fight for research, fight for science, fight for clean air, fight for clean water, and fight for our planet. So stay engaged, please. This is just the beginning. I'm so excited that there's so many of you here today. Keep it up. Keep your voices loud and clear to support science. Thank you all. Happy birthday.
Thank you, Congresswoman Bonamici, for your inspiring words. I am Sumi Mullen, and I am on the steering committee for the March for Science. I am very proud to have put together this amazing lineup of speakers today, and so amazed at these wonderful signs and all these beautiful faces. Thank you so much for coming out. I've been a longtime admirer of our next speaker, U.S. Congressman Earl Blumenauer. Elected to Congress in 1996, Blumenauer has been a champion for cleaning up America's most polluted sites and has introduced legislation to reinstate the federal Superfund tax. Exactly, yeah. He is also a leader in public lands protection, in particular for protecting Oregon's crown jewels such as Mount Hood and the Columbia River Gorge. He is the former vice chair for the House Select Committee of Energy Independence and Global Warming and has strongly defended the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, as well as Environmental Protection Agency's ability to regulate greenhouse gases in the fight against climate change. I also know Congressman Blumenauer as being a longtime advocate for women in science, technology, engineering, and math STEM fields. I'm Vice President of Women's Transportation Seminar. Our mission is to advance women in transportation because women have historically been underrepresented. And Earl has been a longtime supporter, back from his days when he was Portland City Council person. I've seen photos of Earl from the 80s recognizing women and amplifying their accomplishments. He continues to do so today. It is with great pride that I introduce U.S. Congressman Earl Blumenauer.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. You know, this is so inspiring. I'll tell you, serving with Suzanne Bonamici is inspiring. Makes it a little easier to get on the plane to fly back there every week. What a moment in our history that we have to have a march for science. Give me a break. But in a sense, it's overdue because we've watched opponents to science do crazy things in Congress. Do you know that it is illegal to collect data on gun violence by the National Institute of Health? It's illegal to use evidence on the effectiveness of medical procedures to guide what the federal government pays for. This stuff is crazy. Not being able to use an evidence-based approach has dangerous consequences. Just last week, it was an embarrassing moment for our president. You remember? Oh, yeah. Pick one. Which one? Okay. What I am referring to is when the president announced with great fanfare that he was sending an armada of naval ships to Korea. Except they were going to Australia. But if you think the earth is flat, it really doesn't matter, does it? But this is deadly serious. The decisions that are being made, and sadly decisions that aren't being made, are affecting our families now and our future for generations to come. It is outrageous that we have not filled any of the key positions, NOAA, NASA, geologic, that the president doesn't have a science advisor, that key positions in the health arena have not been filled, leaving us vulnerable if there's some pandemic. This is serious stuff. That they appoint, well, I mean, all I have to say is energy, Rick Perry. And put somebody in charge of the EPA who's made a career out of assaulting its ability to protect the environment, our communities, and our families. This is an outrage. Last but not least, I'll try and cut it short because you want to march. But this assault on immigrants and a ban on Muslims is not just immoral, it's stupid if what you want is to have the best and the brightest working together to solve problems. We'll stop that now. There is no better metaphor for what we want for our country, solving problems, moving forward, than what you describe, what you demonstrate here today. But bear in mind, this is not just a partisan issue or an ideological issue. We've got problems right here in Portlandia. We've got people, well-meaning, inside the bubble types, that are casting doubt on the value of immunization. This has dangerous consequences. And I don't think that we fully digested the impact of what a vote my constituents had rejecting fluoridation 60-40. We don't like climate deniers, but it looks suspiciously like dental deniers. I say this because we need to learn how to talk about science in ways that are inclusive. We need to deal with people's fears. We need to respect differences, but we need to get the job done. This march today is a way to do it. Thank you all for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Blumenauer. Let's give it up. So we're about to get started. Just want to give you one quick note. We ask that we encourage people with mobility devices to stay to the right side of the march, or actually, I guess it would be that side. And for the rest of you to leave a 3-foot lane for them so that everyone can participate in the march together. And we're going to start out here going south on NATO. Take a right and go west on Jefferson, go north on 4th Avenue, and then back east on Pine to come back here to Town McCall Waterfront Park to check out the Science Expo, to listen to some music, and to have a great afternoon now that the sun is out. So are you guys ready to start marching? Come on, I didn't hear you. Let's head on out. Head over down to NATO and let's get started.
So there it is. I'll have this up on YouTube later today. My Twitter is @OneLoneLens. Thank you.